Hello and welcome back to Build Propulsion Lab at Swiss Cloud Native Day, and we are kind of moving towards the end of the day here, the end of the great conference. And my next guest is Vadim Bauer. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And by the sticker on your lanyard, we can guess that you are a maintainer, probably, of Harbor.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Maintainer of Harbor. For those of you who are not familiar with Harbor, it's in the OCI Container Registry, open source project.
Exactly.
Let's start with the basics. What is OCI?
All right. So OCI is something that drives Harbor, right? So Harbor is a container registry, and a container registry, to be more precise, has a specification and format, and which is part of the Open Container Initiative. And this is the specification that specifies how images are stored, maintained, and retrieved. And this is what Docker uses, and all other container runtimes use this specification to fetch images.
Yeah, so OCI stands for Open Container Initiative.
Exactly.
And one of the specs there is the registry spec.
Exactly.
And this is basically the API of how images are stored, searched, retrieved, and everything else.
Exactly.
Right, so it brings memories. When I worked with JFrog, before OCI, we actually had to reverse engineer
the Docker
Hub to understand how Docker images are stored and retrieved. And they were releasing new versions, breaking our implementation fun times. Since then, the OCI standard came out, makes everybody place nicely together.
Yeah.
And the interesting part is, obviously now Harbor is a mature product. It's been on the market for 5 years, I would say.
Well, I mean, the first version was almost 10 years ago.
Oh my God! How the time flies!
And I think since 5 years, it's a graduated project,
right,
or part of the CNCF.
Right.
So the project itself is older, but it's in the open, and in the CNCF it's half of the time. Yeah.
Right. And I think by now, kind of a Docker registry is a solved problem.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's a mature market. There are a lot of solutions. And starting from Docker Hub, the original cloud with the private offering, and on-prem, the usual suspects like JFrog Artifactory and Harbor, and I guess a bunch of others. And the question is, I would say, what's next, right? What is the next frontier in this space of registries?
Yeah. So from the perspective of OCI, I mean, the recent development, it's just a couple of months ago, is the OCI 1.1 specification, and it basically allows you to have an artifact and reference in an artifact another artifact, so you can kind of chain artifacts. Okay, you can build artifacts together, and it makes sense if you think of kind of the possibility of extending your artifacts with additional information. Like, if you want to attach a signature to your artifact, you not reinvent the format, so you can create another artifact and link them together so that your first artifact stays unchained and is linked to the signature. So you can kind of attach a signature in the post process to your artifact without changing the artifact, because you cannot change the artifact because it has
it has to be immutable, of course.
It has to be immutable, right? So you cannot change it, but you can create a link, and you can link them together so that they are obvious from the tooling that consume them. They belong together, and you can use this for basically for attaching signatures to your artifacts, to also use this functionality to have the same artifact in different architectures, right? So you have the same artifact, one is for Intel, one is for ARM architecture, and so on and so forth.
And they can be related together.
And they're related together, right? So this is like one of the powerful features, and it's already used quite often, right, in different aspects. So we're talking here not about the container classical itself, because this is used, but I think other aspects like WASM, recently also Helm charts. Recent since a couple of years, OCI is supported in Helm charts. It's kind of a second option, or a lot of times it's now a primary option.
That's what I remember. It
Yeah.
was a couple of years ago. It was kind of experimental.
It is. It
And
was, yeah.
the default was still the Helm registry.
Yeah, exactly.
But I remember the move of making them first-class citizens
Yeah.
in OCI registries and switch to that.
Exactly, and I see it from a lot of the community and users. So this becomes the de facto standard. So a lot of organizations who are using Helm charts in OCI, they're using OCI only, and a lot of the community and public repositories are still in the old format or in dual format nowadays, right? So they're kind of a two format support.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which-
Which brings me, so this kind of unification,
Yeah.
that you can take one tool, one OCI registry, and then store different formats of artifacts there, like Docker images and Helm charts. This brings the question, aren't we moving to the same idea that JFrog pioneered 15 years ago with a universal repository, not only for the end form of the artifact, which is your Docker image and your Helm chart, but also what's inside your Docker images?
Yeah, I think this is definitely a current, I would say, a trend, or a lot of adoption is happening in the space. I mean, there is still, of course, probably very difficult to support these classical formats. If you're talking about a Maven and PM, they're gonna probably still exist in the old format. But I think we will see. In parallel, like with the Helm charts, we will see also support for OCI as well, next to the classical format, and then the tooling will be able to support both formats. And there is already some experiments. We've seen some experiments with their, RPM packages in the past. We've seen some experiments with storing NPM packages in OCI registry natively. So there are some trends, and I think that it brings a lot of value doing this, because the whole cloud native ecosystem is rich on tooling and solutions around dealing with OCI. Like the whole supply chain and a lot of tools in this space support OCI natively. And if we bring these capabilities to other artifacts, we will gain a lot of in the community, and it also makes life a lot easier, right? To maintain one repository or one application versus different applications.
This is fascinating because it's exactly the opposite approach to the same problem of what we did for the last 20 years. Instead of the repository being able to contain different types of artifacts, it's moving the artifacts to the form that our registry supports.
Yeah, it is a bit, yes. Yes, because I think essentially OCI will become the S3 of artifacts. So this is my opinion.
This is right. So I think we have the Gradle elephant right here. It's going to be an interesting experiment to see what it takes to wrap the artifact of a Gradle build in the OCI format.
Yeah, actually not much. We experimented a bit with Maven, for example,
Yeah.
right? So how Maven is doing, and Maven is already kind of interfaces for swapping out the registry part, and I'm pretty sure that Gradle, in the flexibility how it is probably also fairly straightforward to support other artifacts.
No, of course. As registries go, it's a non-issue. The question is what the artifact should look like to be an OCI standard artifact, right?
Yeah.
So this is something that it's interesting to see. So it has probably to have a manifest, which looks like a Docker image manifest, which is actually an OCI artifact manifest, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it will be probably a file system underneath, right? So
Of course.
if you unpack it, it will be going to be a file system with jars.
With
and
the
things
jar
like this,
files and the
inside.
dependencies and everything else.
Exactly. But the interesting part is like if you start layering things, right? So because then you can built an artifact that has a source attached to it, so you can link the binary to the source. This is something that is probably today not done on the artifact level. It is done on the level above it, right? So it's done
Right. A
on the
repository level
repository
or
level.
tooling like
Exactly.
the
Yeah,
Gradle, the
convention,
velocity, which can tie the artifact to the
And
source.
this way you can tie it out on the artifact level. So the artifact know where the source is, right? And you can attach signatures to this, right? And you can even go beyond, and you can break the artifact down in multiple pieces so that you only download the changes, right? The change set and not the whole artifact, right?
In the end of the day, the jar files are archives which we can only manipulate the deltas
Yeah.
of, and that will make everything so much more efficient.
It will, yeah, and there is already tooling solutions around that, how you can download partial images, right? It's mostly for container runtimes, but it's also applicable to even artifacts, right? So that you can optimize your downloads. I mean, it's not a problem for the majority, but for a lot of use cases, it is a problem, right? So if you're talking about like edge cases and things like this, if you want to optimize there, it makes things much easier.
Absolutely, I think this is very exciting and very intriguing, I would say. And with this intriguing thought, I would like to thank you, Vadim, for joining the Build Propulsion Lab at Swiss
Thank you,
Cloud
having me.
Native Day. And you'll stay tuned for the last interview of the day that's coming up right after. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.